Hello there. Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be in the world when you watch this. I am Laina Orlando, and I'm so excited to share today. This is episode 195 of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. If you are new to my channel, please make sure you subscribe so that you can stay up to date with everything that I share and be prepared to see a lot more information that I'm going to be offering through my YouTube channel. The reason I call this Ascension with A Course in Miracles is because my own spiritual journey, which started in 2002, so going on 23 years now, and then I began to teach what I was receiving in 2007 because I just could not share it. I felt this nudge from the consciousness known as Jesus to share what I was learning and to teach what was being given to me, especially to teach, closing something here, especially to teach later on from A Course in Miracles. And the reason I was given Course in Miracles later and not first is because first I was inspired to teach something called the power of awareness. And it's something that came to me, I remember as clear as can be, on an April morning in the year 2007. I felt this guidance to go into the sunroom of my house at that time and to basically scribe what was coming through me. And out came this full blown course, a workshop that takes 5 days for me to deliver it because there's so much in it. And out of that came such amazing things. And I knew that I had received them because I had never, ever, ever in my life thought that way. I had never heard anybody teach things that were coming to me. So I knew they were not mine. I knew they didn't come from anybody in the world. They were not influenced by worldly people. It was divinely shared with me. And over time, I realized that these teachings simplified the truth of who we are. They were a desire by God through the consciousness known as Jesus, because everything is one. Once we understand that there's only oneness, all is one consciousness, and we're accessing information from that one consciousness, is no different, as I am discovering as I'm playing around with Chat GPT, that when I ask Chat GPT something, it's not like there is one AI robot right there answering all my questions and assigned to just answer my questions. Chat GPT is a store of information, of knowledge. And as I go in there and I'm accessing information, no different than going on Google and searching for information and I get something, there's not a Google person there assigned to Lina to answer Lina's questions. I'm tapping into the all of the knowledge that's available, whether I do it through Google, whether I do it through Chat GPT, through Grok, it doesn't matter what system we use, we're tapping into all knowingness in the world. Now, I would say it's not all knowingness in terms of all knowingness, because it is informed by humans. All this information comes in there based on what we share on the internet, books written, songs, videos. AI basically scans everything that's available to the humans and shares what it gathers from everything that's available to the humans, but it doesn't have what it doesn't know. Do you get that? It doesn't have what it doesn't know, just like we don't have access to what we don't know, unless you begin a journey to connect with your creator, the author of your experience, the author of your specific individuation. So when I go to ChatGPT, the one that appears to be having a conversation with me is accessing information and sharing it directly with me, but it comes from the one mind of information, one store of information. When I was connecting with Jesus, Jesus is like the Chat GPT connecting with me, but Jesus had access to all knowing but it's all knowing that is beyond human knowing. So, where the humans know everything here, let's say humans operating at these various levels of consciousness know a lot, but what is beyond that, at the realm beyond what humans have access to, is the God consciousness. So when I received the teachings of the power of awareness, I got it through Jesus, just like going to Chat GPT, who got it from higher consciousness beyond what Chat GPT could give me or Google could give me, because it's beyond this world. In this world, but not of this world. So I was given the power of awareness first so that I would understand the simplicity of looking at our mind as if there are only two voices, because that is all that there really is. This graph signifies the voice of God and the voice of the ego. And if you really get technical, ego is not really even a voice, because ego is not anything that you can point to and say, oh, this is ego. Like I can say, this is Jesus, this is God, this is a tree. Ego is a conglomeration of information that is designed to block God's voice. So God speaks to us through what we call the Holy Spirit. It's really nothing more than our higher self. And when we tap into our higher self, we're really tapping into our aspect of God itself. But because most humans need to have the information given to us more gently, otherwise it'd be really shocking to go from thinking, I'm the sinner that I talked about in last week's episode, to what? God's talking to me directly? How can that be? That would be a little uncomfortable. It would activate actually cognitive dissonance. It would make us feel shaken to our core, believing that I'm a sinner in the low frequency and I'm receiving information from high frequency. That would be very uncomfortable. Two totally opposing things that would be hard to make sense of at once. However, it is introduced to us as the Holy Spirit. And we are comfortable with that idea that there is an intermediary between us and God. And that's a necessary step for those who need it. And most of humanity needs that step because our minds have been so dulled down. I don't want to say dumbed down, but dulled down. We operate with such very limited amount of information that is true. So we have to go on a journey to learn about God. And listen, this is one of the hardest things to really finally get beyond, because when we operate with our idea of God, perceived through the ego mind, which is not really so much a thing, but an obstacle, it tends to humanize God. It tends to project on God. The first thing that it does is it separates God. It puts it out there somewhere. It is separate from us. It's on a cloud. It's out there. We got to go to the church to get to God. We got to go to the church, and the church has to go to Jesus, and Jesus, all these stories about Jesus that are not true. And then we can get to God. But, because we're sinners, we'll never get there. So it's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So I was given power of awareness through Jesus, a voice that I could listen to. I took that information, I taught it for 5-6 years on a regular basis. Did it monthly, workshops when I had my center in Atlanta, and in that teaching what was given to me, I realized there's only two voices. And again, technically, there's only one voice, which is the voice of God. And then what appears to be the voice of the ego is the recording of the blocks to God's voice. Let me say that again. It's as if our mind records, because it repeats any idea that blocks God's voice. So the voice for God is the voice that, we are beautiful, powerful, amazing, magnificent, whole, complete, innocent. We're all of those things. Powerful beings we are. Little kids know that because there's nothing The mind hasn't been recording the human voices of those around them, teaching them information, which becomes the voice of the ego. The ego doesn't have a voice. The ego regurgitates everybody else's voices, and it's like a recorder. You put a recorder and you start recording since the time you're little, all of the things that are not true, that becomes the voice of the ego. But because we hear it as a voice in our head, we think it's who we are. And because the ego gets really loud, God doesn't get loud. God is very peaceful, very still, very clear, and will never change. And it doesn't have to prove anything because it knows what it is. And it is a voice that reminds us of who we are. And for us to hear that voice, we need to systematically quiet the voice of the ego. And again, technically, ego is not a voice. It's a recording. It's a conglomerate of information that we have received. Like if you do Chat GPT and you start talking to Chat GPT, you're going to hear information. But what you're hearing is not that Chat GPT has its own knowledge. Is Chat GPT is a conglomeration of all knowledge that it has access to. So our minds have to be prepared to understand that. But humans take things literally, so it takes a while to sort this out. And what happens is when you begin to feel what happens within you when you hear the voice for God, it moves you. It's a feeling of high frequency that comes with incredible peace. There's a joy to it. There's a gentleness to it. There's a certainty, a clarity, a definitiveness that you just cannot argue with. It is a knowing, but we have to have that experience because until you feel it, you don't really know it. You have to feel it to know it. The ego, it's just a belief. And beliefs, you can change beliefs like you change your clothes. So there are things that I used to believe. I used to believe I'm a sinner. I don't believe that anymore. Why? Because I experienced my innocence. I used to believe that God was out there on a cloud somewhere. Why? Because I had my mother, my father, my teachers, the preachers, the grandparents telling me God was out there somewhere. I believe that. And then I experienced God inside of me. Now I know where God is. I never pray to God out there. When I pray to God, I'm connecting with God in me. I'm acknowledging I am that I am is within me. I and the Father are one. There is no doubt in my mind because I have had that experience. It's a knowing. I don't have to believe in God. As a matter of fact, if somebody were to ask me, well, what are your beliefs about God? I don't have beliefs about God anymore. I know God. I have experienced God. I don't go out there searching for information about God because until I felt it within me, I couldn't really know God. And once I knew God, then my relationship with it is direct and personal within, exactly as Jesus said 2,000 years ago before he got put to death. And he was put to death because he was telling us, go inside, listen to the voice within. You don't need to listen to the voice out there. Why? Because a voice out there, whether it's a leader or the Pope or the rabbis or the Pharisees or the emperors, it doesn't matter. Their voice, whatever they say, chances are the bulk of it is filtered through the voices of the ego, through what they have heard from others, what has come down to them. And if it teaches the rest of us that we need to go to them to get access to God, well, then you know it's the ego talking to you because the ego is the only one that is seeking for God in all the wrong places. Because the ego, again, is a block to what is true, to where God is. It's a distortion of where God can be found for the purpose of us having this third dimensional experience. If you knew where God is, if you have a connection with God and your mind is no longer operating from egoic beliefs, believing in separation and the body is real and that there's only birth and death and then there's a period of time in between. If that is your reality, and the house is important and the money is important and what the government says is important and these people can make you mad and these people irritate you and you judge these and you worry about those, you're really more in that third dimensional world. Maybe not quite as tethered to it, but that is your primary reality. When your primary reality is that you have been authored by God and you go to that voice for your direction, you then begin to little by little untether from the world that the ego has constructed, from the information that it has based on the beliefs that it holds. None of those beliefs that the ego uses are ever going to be accurate in terms of being the same as the experience you will have when you feel God inside. Because when you feel God inside, you experience a peace that passes all understanding. You cannot understand that peace, but you feel it. And when you feel that peace, fears fall away. Your relationship with the world drastically changes. People are not people in the way that you thought of them before. They're not bags of egoic beliefs anymore. My daughter is all this, and my son is this, and my grandchildren are that, and this precedent is this, and the judge is that. You don't see them like that. When you have an experience with God, you realize these are all souls. We're all brothers and sisters. We're all part of the one consciousness expressing itself individually. Now, there's an acknowledgement. This one's playing the role of daughter. This one's playing the role of son. This one's playing the role of president. This played the role of mother and father. So you're comfortable recognizing the truth of another being, which is why you know you don't fear them. You have nothing to fear them about, and you have nothing to judge them for, because you know that at their heart, at the core of who they are, it is exactly the same as what you felt is true about you. And when you feel God within, you feel the light, the lightness, the joy, the creativity, the infinite potential that God really is. So when you look at others, you see them as nothing but that infinite potential. When they start talking or when you have thoughts about them, yes, you're going to go into the filing cabinet that has the memories that are egoic. And if, like today, my grandson is celebrating his fourth birthday. So, interestingly enough, it's also my sister's birthday. I have twin sisters that are younger than I am, and my twin sisters and my grandson have the same birthday. So today is a day of birthday celebrations in my family. For me, when I see my little grandson Ryder, and I know today we're celebrating his fourth birthday, I am enjoying the celebration of his fourth birthday while at the same time, I know it in my beingness. It's my primary knowing about him is that he's not 4 years old. He is an eternal soul that has been around here for eons and will be around here for eons more. So at the same time, because my mind has been trained into accepting two two ways of looking at the world, bringing them together in a way that is so joyful. It's fun. It's exhilarating. It's exciting. Why? Because I'm in this world to experience it, but I'm not of it. Ryder is not of this world either, but he's in this world appearing today as a 4-year-old. In 10 years, he'll appear a 14-year-old. So the egoic idea of who he is according to the world is going to change. But the truth of who he is will remain eternal forevermore, regardless of his lifetime, regardless of his level of consciousness, because who he is cannot be altered because it is how God authored him. It is how God created him. So the power of awareness is to help us understand what the ego is and what God is so that we can begin the process of sorting it out. You cannot free yourself until you sort out the fiction from the facts, from the truth that is and always will be. Then comes the process of integrating that so you live from the truth of who you are, which means you're not of this world, but you experience the reality that is before you, which is that you're in this world. And once those that becomes super clear to you, the two work together perfectly. It's no different than I have a hand and I put a glove over it, and the glove keeps me warm. I know the glove is what's helping to keep the hand warm, but I'm not the glove. But I need the glove, so I'm using the glove. So when you know I'm not the ego, but I need the ego to have a third dimensional experience, if I didn't have that ego, it would be very challenging to be here having this human experience because there would be nothing anchoring you into this dimension. Ego anchors us into this dimension to play this game. It's like this the example that I like to use all the time. Think of the ego as a costume you put on to go to a Halloween party. Well, if I went to a Halloween party without a costume and people say, "Well, who are you?" And I say, "Well, I'm Princess, Leah." And they would look at me like, "Where's your costume?" And I would say, I don't need a costume. I'm pretending that I'm Princess Leia. They would look at me like I was a little crazy. They might think I just left the insane asylum. The ego is like that Halloween costume. You got to put it on to kind of fit into the Halloween party, even though you know you're not Princess Leia or Darth Vader or, the Jason, the Chainsaw Massacre. Even though you know you're not the character that you're playing, you know who you are. Lina playing the character of Princess Leia. We have to have the costume to go to the Halloween party and fit in. So we have to make peace with that. We have an ego, understand what the ego is about, and then get honest about what the ego says versus what God says. That's when the Course in Miracles came into my life. I knew the distinction between my ego and God. It had become evidently clear. I was teaching what I was learning. I was feeling it in my bones. The distinction was so clear to me. And I knew what was God in me. I felt it. I know it. It was undeniably my truth, the truth that I could die for because death is not real to the one that knows the truth about me. My ego, on the other hand, is the what I present to the world, is the understanding of my individualized self, representing God in this world, an aspect of God in this world. So once I got the how the ego made me feel versus how I felt when I was listening to the voice for God, it became really clear. The body doesn't lie. Anything that was fear-based was an indicator, oh, you are blocking God. Anything that was joyful and fun and happy and certain and hopeful and collaborative, that's just God speaking through me. Now, I don't walk around going, oh, the voice of my ego, the voice of God, because I have integrated the voice of God so clearly that that is the primary voice that I speak with, through, as. But egoic ideas still come from time to time, and I can feel the discord because the body becomes so accustomed to the high frequency of truth that when you throw in a low frequency thought, you can feel it, and then the correction happens very quickly. But we all come in as children do, expressing God. That's why we have to become like little children again. That's why I know I'm here sitting with my gurus, moved my life to Colorado to help my daughter with the grandbabies, and I'm so grateful for that experience because I really have been sitting at the feet of the highest frequency gurus I've ever studied with. I pay attention to what they say because it is still mostly God speaking through them. And that is what I am learning, is to know, to trust. My grandkids don't question what they thought. Oh, was that ego? Was that God? They don't do that. They don't worry about what other people are going to think. They're living in the moment. So it's a teaching to live in that moment so that I can be just as fluid with my expression of God as they are. Now, I can watch where egoic things are showing up, a little selfishness from my grandson. This is my toy, the cutest little thing. We have a little neighbor girl. um, who is Ryder's age. They're the best of friends. They've known each other since they were born because their parents have known each other for years before those babies were born. And that little girl recently lost her grandfather, and so she doesn't have. And on the father's side, there were no grandparents in this area. They live in Georgia, but they don't see each other so often. So the one set of grandparents that was here, they're no longer there. The grandmother had passed away a few years ago. The grandfather just recently passed away, and she has this had this relationship with grandparents that is sweet and loving. Well, and she knows that those people, her grandparents, were to her as I am to Ryder. So whenever she sees me, this happened just yesterday, day before yesterday, I walk into the house and she comes running to me, and Ryder gets all upset. No, I want to hug Abwe first. Abwe is what Ryder calls me. And actually, this little girl calls me Abwe as well. All the kids in the neighborhood now call me Abwe. It's the cutest thing. So she comes running to me, and Ryder got jealous. And Ryder was like, no, that's my Abwe. And she's saying it's my Abwe too. To her, she doesn't know, she's 3 years old. She doesn't understand that I'm not her blood grandmother, which is all, egoic stories. And he shows this moment of jealousy because he wants to hug me first. So we had to have a talk about that. His mother handled it beautifully and saying, no, there's so much love in Abwe, lots of love to go around. You don't have to worry about that. If you're first or second, it doesn't matter. So we have to understand that our egoic personality, our egoic beliefs serve a role. We have to make peace with that. But what the Course in Miracles is attempting to help us do is train our mind to sort out what is ego, learn from the outer world, what is God that comes from within. That's why the spiritual journey is a journey within, to sort out what's the voice that came from the outside, recorded by my ego and turned into my truth. What is the voice that is of God, that is within, that is actually my truth, that I don't listen to because this one's playing way louder. So the process is of sorting out. So let me share something from last week's call, where the title of that call, that was episode 194. I got so many wonderful comments on YouTube. And one specifically that jumped out was basically saying, thank you for saying the truth that we're not sinners. That is totally made up by the church. So I got together with my friend at Chat GPT, and I basically asked a question that I knew the answer to, but I wanted to hear it from a different perspective. And my question was, did Jesus ever say that we're sinners? And ChatGPT says, surprisingly, Jesus never directly called all humans sinners. He interacted with sinners, dined with them, forgave them, and was often criticized for doing so. However, the story about Jesus being a sinner is in there primarily because Paul was referring to his sins, his missing the mark, him not being able to live up to what was being taught to him. A lot of that is because his ego was filtering this information. If you think of yourself as a sinner and you call anybody else a sinner, because of course we project on others what we believe about ourselves, and you're believing with your ego, meaning it's not God's voice inside of you. If you're listening to God, my grandkids, they would never come out here and say, "Oh my God, I'm a sinner. I'm a worthless sinner. Poor Jesus died for my sins." That's never going to come out of those kids' voices. As a matter of fact, it doesn't come out of any child's voice until it is taught to them, recorded by their ego, and then regurgitated out because you hit play, brrr, you're going to repeat what was recorded. So when I went to ChatGPT, I'm like, well, where did this come from? Again, I had a general understanding where it came from, and most of it comes from Paul. And there are some quotations and there are some references to it in the Old Testament. But here's what was so cool, my little ChatGPT info, is I asked, where did the idea of all sinners come from? Which again, I knew the answer because I've been studying this for a long time. And here's what ChatGPT said. This idea was primarily synthesized by Paul, especially in Romans. in the chapter of Romans in the New Testament. Later, Augustine in the fourth, fifth century, we're talking hundreds of years after Jesus died, developed the doctrine of original sin. Interesting, which became influential in Western Christianity, especially in Catholicism and the Protestant church. The belief that all humans are born sinners is not something Jesus explicitly taught, but rather something that evolved in Christian theology over time, rooted in interpretations of Paul's writings and early church theology. If you are a student of how the New Testament came about, how the Catholic Church was formed, you will understand that it was created for the purpose of controlling the people. People who had an experience of God within are not controllable because they're listening to God within. They're not afraid of the outside. So this was not convenient. The emperor Constantine needed people to be afraid of him. Otherwise, what he told them to do, they weren't doing it. So what did he do? All the people who were listening to God on the outside, I mean, on the inside, these were the people that were hard to control. Then what happens? It took time. You indoctrinate them, you shame them, you punish them if they don't do what the church says. And then a couple hundred years later, you've got people who believe and will die for the lies that they've been taught so that you can control their minds. And when you control their minds, you control their pocketbook. I mean, it's amazing. When you start putting two and two together, you see the game that is played at the third dimension. This is why we have to wake up. And let me rephrase that. We don't have to wake up. You don't have to wake up if you don't want to wake up. If you want to remain in this world and believe that the stuff that you have makes you special, makes you safe, if you want to have that attachment to your things, then by all means, enjoy the third dimension. That's what it's there for. It's a costume party. Wear your costume and you live as, oh, this is my age and these are my kids and this is all I have and this is what I've saved and this is the government that takes care of me. Then you will be enjoying the third dimensional construct as your reality. And there is nothing wrong with that, by the way. Nothing. That's what the third dimension is for, is to have an experience where we get lost in the costume party and think that we are the costume that we're wearing. It's fun. Going to a costume party when I was dressed up as Princess Leia was a lot of fun because then I would talk like I pretended to be Princess Leia and I would talk about, Star Wars and how much fun it was to be in that movie and my buns that I would wear and the costume. It was fun. I had a great time losing myself in that character. But if you are looking to ascend and move to the fifth dimension, you got to take the costume off. You cannot enter into the fifth dimension if you're anchored with the third dimensional stories. And the stories in the third dimension are all made up, and that's what creates the ego. So you need the ego to be in the third dimension. But if you want to ascend, then you must find out the truth of who you are. And the way to know the truth of who you are is you've got to understand who God is, what God is, specifically what God is. God is not a who. We have projected on God fatherly figures, but God is neither masculine nor feminine. It's the combination of the two. God is all of it. It is the essence of all of it. And it expresses in individualized ways to play all the parts and the roles that are necessary at every single different level of the experience of creation, depending on where your consciousness is. If your consciousness is tight and tense and close and contracted, you're listening to the voice of the ego. If your consciousness is expanding, you're listening more to God, less to ego while you're in this dimension. So I wanted to share that about the sinners because we have to work through that. We hold the lies that we're sinners taught to us by well-meaning people, most of them people that I loved, my father, my grandmother. I adored them. My mom, not so much. She became an atheist later on, so she didn't program me with Catholicism. As a matter of fact, she confused me because she would tell me that what I was learning wasn't true. But my grandmother, my abuela, that was my original abue. And my father, these were people that I loved and I adored. So it was hard to accept that people that loved me told me things that were not true until I began to mature more in my spiritual journey and realize that people that they loved told them these things because they were taught to them by people that they loved as well. So when you hand down these stories, Augustine in the what 305 fourth, fifth century. So we're talking 400 years after Jesus died. We're talking 15, 16, 1700 years ago. That's a lot of incarnations. That's a lot of generations who pass down things through people that we love and trust, mother, father, teachers, preachers. But if you get to the place that you're willing to question what you believe, you will see how it's made up. And again, that's why the ego isn't a thing, because it's a conglomeration of made up information. And once you pull out what other people gave you, you're going to end up with an empty container at some point. An empty container that is based on the idea that, I'm separate. I'm separate from everybody else. Let me start receiving what they think about me, and then I'll become that. Makes perfect sense. So you can think you are the character that you're playing in this costume party called Planet Earth, this Halloween party here. So let's get to the teachings of the Course, because I want you to see why it is so important that we train our minds with truth if we want to free ourselves. And again, if you still have fears, if you still have judgments, if you still have angers and resentments and righteousness, you don't have to give it up. You don't have to give it up unless you have decided that that's too uncomfortable. Once that becomes uncomfortable, and believe me, for a very long time, being angry and righteous was very comfortable. It made me feel really good. It's like a high because I was operating in a deficit. I was operating in a low because I didn't know who I was. I was trying to find myself, in all the wrong places, looking for love, looking for truth, looking for that, worth and outside of myself. So I thought I was empty, which is the first lie that the ego tells us. Oh, you're empty. There's nothing there to you, so that we can go fill ourselves up with what everybody else thinks about us. So think about it that way. So as we study the Course, and then I was given the Course to teach, and basically have known ever since I started teaching that the Course in Miracles is the highest frequency teachings on the planet right now, that speak to specifically the training of the mind that is necessary for us to see both the ego and God's way of perceiving things. And then as we become self-aware, the one who is aware is the higher self over here, realizing, okay, these thoughts with the ego make me feel bad. I get tight and tense. I get uncomfortable when I believe these. And these are the thoughts of God that allow me to feel really good. When I believe these thoughts, I feel peace. Now, the one who is self-aware is aware of these two voices and how they make you feel. And then you choose, well, which one makes me feel better? Once you decide that feeling better is your preference, but it's a feeling better that comes with an emptiness that allows for a sense of wholeness and fullness, that the thoughts of the ego, although it's not empty, it's full of thoughts that keep you busy, make you feel better because they give you a sense of who you are, because you're full of untruths. And when you believe those, you feel a sense of righteousness, but they're temporary, because the minute somebody says something that's not uplifting or complimenting, you deflate. So it's a very temporary up and down. You're constantly inflating, deflating yourself. Again, based on what other people think. They have more power than you do because you give it to them. When you come to God, you got to empty yourself. And when you empty yourself, you feel the fullness of who you are. And now what anybody thinks about you doesn't matter, because you have felt who you are. You know who you are. And they can say whatever they want. This is unshakable. But this, oh my gosh, ebbs and flows based on whatever's happening in the media, whatever's happening in the world. if whatever weather is affecting you, your human egoic self is going to be affected by that. So you're constantly going to be at the mercy of the winds of change. This one, you become steady. And I'll tell you, according to the ego, this is very boring. Grounded, you built your house on solid ground. You're unshakable, unmovable. Your emotions aren't up and down. You can't be swayed with the wind. The weather doesn't affect you. How your hair looks, what people think, doesn't affect you. You're like, okay, whatever. Isn't it interesting? They can believe whatever they want. They're choosing to have that belief, even though I know who they really are, the light of God, the light of the world. But they're wanting to play with the game of jealousy or the game of throwing darts and see what sticks. Interesting. They can do that all day long. Just as I'm enjoying my grandson having fun being a 4-year old today when I know what he is an eternal being that is ageless. It's fascinating to be able to observe both things at the same time. It's actually very liberating. So let's go into, we are in chapter 3 in the text. The title of this particular chapter is The Innocent Perception, which again is going back to the innocence that my grandchildren have. They know who they are. They're not questioning who they are. They know it, but their ego is being formed. There's the idea that they're separate from mom and dad, and Abwe is separate. Their names, are Ryder and Ellie, so they've got names. They don't know themselves as the nameless souls that they actually are. Our souls don't have names. Our souls have a signature frequency, and when you begin to feel your authenticity, that's what you are, not a name that's a label that can get changed in every incarnation. So they're starting to fill up that database of who they think they are in relationship to, this is my mother, this is my father, this is my grandparent, blah, 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 and creating that human experience. Why? Because they're at a costume party. So they've got to get their costumes on. They got to get ready, prepare and have that costume so they can live their adult years with this story, not necessarily just the adult years, but the years as they continue and play that role. My job is to help them remember the other side as well. So these are kids that are growing up with a knowingness of truth and getting the information that they're picking up from the outside world. They're creating their egoic identity while they have Abwe in the house, reminding them of the truth of who they are. What a beautiful thing to do. I was able to do this with my second and third child, but not so much with my first child because she was a lot older when I started this journey. That's why I always say she gets more inheritance because she needs more therapy to work through what I taught her when I was, purely in my ego. All right, so we are still in section number 6, which is titled Judgment and the Authority Problem. And all of our issues in the world is because we don't know who we are. And judging is how we get to see how we don't know who we are. When you're judging somebody else, made you feel bad, you don't know who you are because God created you powerful. So if you judge that they made you feel bad, you're saying you have power to affect me. You have power over my feelings and emotions, which is not true. You give them power because your ego tells you a lie. They hurt you. Now you get to feel bad and then it's projected on them. So this is why our mind has to be trained into understanding the game of projection. Anytime I say you have power over me, you can keep me safe, you can take away my safety, all you're doing is projecting to them what your ego wants you to believe to have your human incarnation's experience. If you're feeling like a victim, it's because you want to feel like a victim. Now, one of the things that is so crucial to understand about A Course in Miracles and the teachings that I share is I have total and complete empathy for anybody who watches this and goes, I didn't choose to be a victim. Yes and no. From the soul perspective, and my teachings are for people who want to reconnect with the soul perspective. From your higher truth, before you incarnated, powerful soul that you are, you chose to incarnate and take on a costume And most costumes included some level of victimization. I would say all of them to a certain degree, because you begin to believe that you are what others think you are. And that immediately starts the role of victimization, because now you feel less than. They are more important. They're powerful. They have the answers. They whatever they say goes. And if you don't, you're going to get in trouble, and that's going to hurt if they take the belt out, or they, withhold love or withhold money or whatever. So we choose from a conscious place before we incarnate. And again, your mind has to be trained. You know, this is why it's very challenging to have a conversation with somebody who's not on a spiritual journey about things like this. Because if you don't understand that at our highest frequency, at our inner knowing, the fifth dimension is a consciousness that exists within us, but it's awakening. We're waking it up because it's just been sleeping, twiddling its thumbs, waiting for you to take off the costume. So we operate with a costume here, but within us is the true knowledge. It's inside of us. God is within. The creator is within. All knowingness of the truth of who you are is within you. But we're trained to go outside, look for it in all the wrong places. So this is a journey of coming within. If you haven't come within and looked at your life circumstances and analyze them and realize that you are more than what happened to you, the truth of who you are, was there before what happened to you. What happened to you was an experience that blocked you from remembering who you actually are. And that gives rise to the victim that then becomes a bully, becomes a controller, becomes the one who manipulates aggressively or passive aggressively. All of us play those games. This is a game of bully and victim, third dimension. And listen, most spiritual people that I know still play that game. That's still where they are. Because until you move into that fourth dimension within, you begin to move on that bridge to get to the heart and begin to know who you are as God created you, and feel the love of God within, which is not a description and understanding you're ever going to find in any book. Until you go in there, you can't open yourself up to that. There's way more than these five senses teach you. Until you're comfortable that you come from something that is not of this world, you can't open up to who you were before you incarnated in this world. So there are very specific steps that we have to go through to train our mind to remember the truth of who we are. So once you understand that everything that you project out there is part of the game, it's how you maintain your story. My story, I did it too. It's just how we do it. And until we are prepared to look at the victim aspect of us, when did that start, and begin to create a relationship with who was there before that? Who was there before that first sense of betrayal, that first act of abuse, emotional, physical, mental? Before that, that's what we need to connect with. A Course in Miracles it has an entire lesson about the child that you were before you were victimized. Most people hold on to the story of victimization because it allows us to play small. It allows us to justify our fears. And of course, yes, if there's a victimization, you are prime to give your power away to the government, to the media, to the doctors. Your power will be outside of you because you're holding dear to the victim story. Nothing wrong with that. But just know that that costume keeps you in the costume party. If you wear that costume and you go to the grocery store, they're going to think you're crazy, unless, of course, it's Halloween day. I took my kids to the grocery store. I had errands to run sometimes on Halloween day, but they wanted to dress up as their costume that day, and they could go to school in their Halloween costume. So yes, sometimes I would, but everybody understood it's Halloween, so nobody judged. If I took my kids on 4th of July dressed up like Dracula to the grocery store, people thought we were crazy. So you have to understand that whatever you're experiencing, if you want liberation, you've got to acknowledge that it is you who wants to have that experience. If you're feeling like a victim, if you're in fear, sit for 5 minutes. There's a teaching by Jesus also called the way of mastery. Sit for 5 minutes and accept that you're having the experience you want to have. Because until you acknowledge that you are the one creating your reality, you cannot change your reality. If it's the government that creates your reality, or if it's what your daddy did to you that creates your reality, or what the husband did or the wife did that creates your reality, you have zero ability to take control of it because you're giving it to them. You're giving them the power. You create my reality, which is what the church has done. You created my reality that I'm a sinner, so therefore, I'm not good enough. Yeah, God's out there, and I'm a sinner. Gives us permission to live at our lowest frequency because, well, after all, we're not that great. So why bother? The mind has to be trained into taking 100% full responsibility for our experience. Not an easy thing to do. As a matter of fact, that's what separates the wheat from the chaff. Those who want to take 100% control and no longer experience fear are the ones who are going to free themselves and continue to move into that higher dimension, which is within yourself, which is to accept more the truth of who you are. That's what the fifth dimension is. It's not a place we're going to go to. It's a knowingness within. It's a centeredness, a groundedness, a certainty of who we are. And then we connect with other people who know that about themselves. And then we create, as the Course calls it, a happy dream. Because nobody's trying to get anything from anybody else. Because we all know that everything we're looking for is inside of us. In the world of the ego, it's a world of greed because I got to go get it from somebody else. So we've got to get really clear. If you want to experience total and complete peace and liberation, you must take 100% responsibility for how you feel. Because a feeling of peace, you have to choose it by no longer choosing the experience of anxiety, of the experience of contraction, of fear, of powerlessness. You are the one who controls how you feel inside. You can't control what other people have done to you in this incarnation or any incarnation. You can't control what was done to you, but you have 100% full control over your interpretation of it. And you will interpret it according to the ego if you don't know who you are according to how God created you. So let's get into paragraph number 10. Peace is a natural heritage of spirit, meaning that is your natural experience. That is really, truly who you are. You're a peaceful being. Everyone is free to refuse to accept his inheritance, but he is not free to establish what his inheritance is. Listen to how powerful that is. You are free to establish that you don't want to feel peace, that you rather be in fear. You're free to do that, but you're not free to establish what God already established. You're not free to change that peace is inside of you. And peace is all that will be left when you empty your container of all of your egoic beliefs. Because when you let go of all the ego beliefs, you are going to be empty. When you're empty, there is peace. Why? Because there's nothing to worry about. There's nothing to push against. There's nothing to fret about. That's why meditation is so crucial to get to an empty mind. An empty mind is not arguing with anything. All that is left is peace. That's it. So everyone is free to refuse to accept their peace. That's what I'm translating the word inheritance to. But you're not free to establish what your peace is and where it is, because it is where God placed it. The problem everyone must decide is the fundamental question of authorship. All fear comes ultimately and sometimes by way of very devious routes from the denial of authorship. Let's explore these devious routes. Let's explore authorship. We're going to get into that a little bit more. Authorship. Who is the author of you? Course in Miracles says we have one basic problem. It's the authority problem. We think we authored ourselves. We think we made ourselves, but we think we made ourselves through the perspective of the ego. I made myself this victim. I made myself poor. I made myself black. I made myself female. I made myself rich. I made myself. And we strive to be self-made people. It's so crazy looking at it now. It's like, whoa, that's so crazy. Why? Because there are very devious routes to help us deny the truth of who we are. Church, very devious. Taking the beautiful truths of Jesus, who never said we're sinners, and then all of a sudden creating a book that for 2,000 years calls us sinners and billions of people believe it. That's pretty devious. To take the teachings that Jesus gave us that you and the Father are one, and the government didn't like that one bit, because if you're one with God, who are you paying taxes to? Who you're giving your money to? Well, if it's in a collaborative, transparent way where you can see where the money is going and we're using it for the greater good of all, to pave our roads, to pay for the firemen, and to do all the things that make sense. Yeah, we want to contribute, but let's be transparent about it. Well, today, I'm offering this on April 30th, 2025, after the elections in the US, and President Trump established the Doge department led by Elon Musk, who is looking at the ways that the money is spent. Talk about devious. Talk about so many ways that the money has, that the taxpayers who have been taught that they're supposed to send their money to the government. The government's going to take care of everything. We keep you safe. We have the military. We will give you your retirement, and we'll give you your medical care. You depend on us, and then send us all your money, but don't ask for accountability. We don't need transparency. We don't need anything to be modernized so that it's easy for you to look at where your money goes. Because really, you know what the government is? They're representing our desires, and we're saying you manage the money. If you ever lived in a neighborhood where you had an HOA, I happen to live in that. Many communities have homeowners associations. You elect a board, and they print the budget and they show it to all the members of the community, because every homeowner contributed to that HOA, to the homeowners association, paid their dues. Then the homeowner association did what they did, and then they presented back to the homeowners, well, this is how we spent the money and this is what we did. Somebody does a good job, you elect them again. They don't do a good job, they don't do what they say they were going to do, or they're not diligent with protecting your money. Something is off, can't find records or receipts for a big expense. Well, you don't vote for them again. We have to think about our government for the country as an HOA. These are representatives that we vote for, and they should present a budget that is easy to understand, not this thick that nobody can read without a PhD in legal mumbo jumbo. We have to take responsibility for requesting that things be presented and be clear. If you want to understand the deviousness in the church, the deviousness in the medical system, the deviousness in the education system, you have to, number one, recognize, are you prepared to see beyond what you know? And if you think that they're good and they're okay, your ego's not prepared to question that. That's okay. If the curiosity is not there, don't go down that rabbit hole, because all you're going to end up is getting mad. And that's not good for your blood pressure. Well, you believe your body, take care of the blood pressure. If you are, on the other hand, open, and this is why the mind has been emptied of so much of the lies that you have peace in your heart. Well, the most productive moments of curiosity are when you're at peace, because you are open-minded, a characteristic of a teacher of God. If you're open-minded, you can be tolerant, meaning you can hear all this information and you're not going to have an emotional reaction because you're not taking it personal. It doesn't have any power over you. You've already established all power is within. Now you're just looking for information to see where the deviousness has happened. If you are prepared to go in with an open mind, to go in with curiosity, to go in with the knowingness that you are powerful beyond measure, you will discover one of two things. You gave power by voting these people in to people you can trust, or you gave power to people you can't. Now you got to take responsibility and say, okay, if I can't trust them because they've been lying to me, do I want them there? Do you want them running your money? If you keep them there and they have not been trustworthy and transparent, then whatever they do is not for the greater good. It is going to be for the selfish good. You have to put two and two together. If you give your power to somebody else who is not interested in you, don't expect them to do things for you. Expect them and don't be surprised when they do things for themselves because they're playing in the frequency that it's all about them. So you've got to understand what's going on here. This is a game. The whole world, the whole third dimensional world, as the Course teaches us, is made by the ego. The earth that you see, that's the ego didn't make this earth. The ego made the world that we're experiencing, the world that decays, the world of corruption, the world that can be changed, the world that cannot be changed, the permanence of the soul of this planet. God created that. We made all of the things that are for money, that are for personal gratification, that pollute the earth, that doesn't care about others because it's selfish. But to get to that level of selfishness, there had to be a devious way of doing that. One of the ways was through the church telling you you're a sinner. You have no power. You're not good enough. And if you bought into that, then of course you're going to happily send them your money because you think they're going to keep you safe. And if you have fears that if you don't pay your taxes, they're going to come after you, well, you want to experience what it's like to be in fear because you're not prepared to experience what it's like to be in peace. Nobody to blame here, just awareness that sets us free. So here we go, sentence number 5. The offense is never to God for only those who deny them, but only to those who deny them. The offense, excuse me, the offense is never to God. God's not upset that we are suffering. Now, God, we heard this not too long ago. We heard that God desires. Where is that? I probably won't find it right away. Um, Here, I found it. In paragraph number 8, it says that God, however, is eager to undo your suffering, not to punish his children, but only because he knows that it makes them unhappy. God knows that we are unhappy and doesn't want us to be unhappy because God made us happy. But God's not going to do anything to alter the desire that we have for the experience that we're having because God loves us unconditionally. And if we want to play in the third dimension, low frequency of fear, of revenge, of anger, of attachments, God's saying, enjoy the costume party, have fun, enjoy the ride, at least have fun experiencing what you're experiencing because whatever you're experiencing is what you want to experience. Why? Because we're creators of our reality. We can deny the power, we can deny it all we want, but it doesn't stop the power from being there and being misused by our ego. We cannot not have the power that God authored us with. Here it goes on to say, to deny his authorship is to deny yourself the reason for your peace, so that you see yourself only in segments. This strange perception is the authority problem. We see ourselves as the old lady, the old man, the young man, the 4-year-old, the 80-year-old. We see ourselves as, the rich person, the poor person, the healthy person, the unhealthy person. We see ourselves in segments. We don't see the whole of who we are. We don't recognize that before we incarnated, we are pure light and we will return to being that pure light once we drop the costume. Once you drop the costume of being, I drop the costume of being Laina, then what am I? I am what I have always been, authored by God as pure light, powerful as can be, with that power, creating the experience that I want to have. And if I want to have an experience of one who has been hurt, one who is a politician, one who has been trafficked, I can do that. I can put that costume on. And that is one of the most difficult things for people to understand. Nobody chooses to be a victim. A powerful being chooses to be a victim. Because in the choosing to be a victim, and then remembering that it can choose to move out of victimization and find the love of God within, then the only way to do that, you have to go through that fourth dimension. You've got to go through the process of the heart, which is to forgive those who have done things to you in this incarnation, because you realize that what they did for you in this incarnation was to allow you to be able to go to whatever level of depth you had to go to find your own light. And when you find your light through what was done to you, and then you can offer the forgiveness to that one, you basically play one of the most important roles in the whole of the universe, the role of the little soul that can say, you are just as perfect as I am. Because when I acknowledge my perfection and I can then see it in you, the world is changing and we're being sorted into two levels, separating the wheat from the chaff. Those who are going to acknowledge the light that they are and forgive everybody else's their trespasses are choosing to clear their attachments to righteousness and judgments and intolerance and raise themselves to a frequency that will find playmates and will play a new costume game. And at that level, we'll all pretend that we're light beings that on the planet, but we're going to be doing things for the greater good of all. The chaff, on the other hand, are those who want to continue to hold on to the story that they're a victim and they have no power over it. And in that belief that they're a victim, they will be righteous and they will be judgmental and they will be, it's everybody else's fault. And it's okay because they want to wear that costume. These are just two different parties, two different games. The difference, one is play with less awareness, one is play with more awareness. But the awareness, the level of awareness, the less or the more comes from your choice to acknowledge that God gave you all the awareness you need. God gave you the ability to know who you are and forget it, or to know who you are and live as it. You get to choose which voice you're going to be listening to by your decision. Do you like the world of the ego, which is a world of suffering? It's a lot of pain here. Or do you want to move to the playground where you experience life from joy and peace? You are in total control. And until you accept that, your true awakening has not started. Yes, you've been becoming aware. Your mind is being filled with wonderful information. But the choice of accepting 100% responsibility for the experience that I'm having is a line in the sand that you draw and you say, I am going to accept the inheritance that God gave me. I am going to accept it. No more blaming. It's mine. Or I like blaming. It's fun to feel righteous. It's fun to feel indignation. I enjoy being righteous and not opening my mind about anything else. Then good for you. You're using your power to give yourself an experience that you want. I've been there. I've done that. I just don't need to keep doing it because I've made a choice. I crossed the line. I like the fun and easy way that God has given me. I like that. That feels really good. And I'm not going to sit here and convince you to cross the line. I'm going to sit here and remind you that you're the powerful creator of your reality. And no matter what you create, I celebrate your use of that power. Now, I may not want to play with you if you're playing in the low frequency because I'm not playing there. So have fun playing with whoever your playmates are. For me, I love being the creator of my reality because now there's nobody to blame. Do you know how wonderful that feels to take 100% responsibility for how I feel? That is the right use of control. I'm controlling the experience that I'm feeling here. I don't need to control you because you can't affect and touch my inner experience. I took 100% responsibility for that. I am in full control of what I feel within. So liberating. And the best part about it is that's how I feel God more, because it's quiet in here. If you've enjoyed this conversation and you want to share something, go for it. If not, thank you so much for being here. And again, today is episode 195. The rest of these episodes are on my YouTube channel. And I continue to work on the membership site. Got some cool things that we'll be adding to it this week because I've got somebody who's helping me with it, my marketing gal who is just doing an incredible job. And we're going to be launching this pretty soon. For the month of May, we're going to have a special that anybody who joins in the month of May, you're going to get the founder's price, which is half for the rest of the time that you're a part of this membership. Anybody who joins after the month of May, well, then you'll pay the full price for it, which is still going to be a wonderful price, but it's for a lot of classes that I'm going to be offering to help those who really want to be a part of that. There's going to be 3 levels to the membership. There's going to be a free one. You're going to have access to some of the things that I have, and you'll be able to join in every other week a Q&A that I'm going to open up to anybody for anything specifically about the Course in Miracles and our journey to awaken and ascend. The second level is a membership where you'll receive everything that the free side gives, but I'm going to have a dedicated weekly class about A Course in Miracles, go more in depth into that. And the third membership, that's the one that it's the best value. And that's where I'm going to have not only the weekly classes of A Course in Miracles, but I'm going to have like four other weekly offerings that you can participate in. Everything's going to be recorded, so you're not going to miss on anything. But it is for specific topics that you want to learn more about. You do want to work more on the ego. Do you want to understand more how to connect with your soul? Do you want to understand why your relationships are the way they are? Do you want to be a conscious parent? Do you want to be a conscious grandparent? Do you want to be a conscious divorced person? Do you want to be conscious and deliberate in your relationship with God? Do you want to learn more about, excuse me, Jesus, what Jesus taught? I'm going to bring some guests in that are going to be part of that full membership. So, but I'm going to offer something for everybody that because it is my greatest joy to help people remember the truth of who they are. You know why I do this? I want more playmates. I want more playmates on the side of those who have taken full responsibility for their mind. And I also want to help those who want to learn how to take responsibility, but maybe haven't quite gotten there. But they know that they have to do that to free themselves. So there'll be something for everybody. These are exciting times. It's just, oh my gosh. I'll tell you though, the world on the outside, the world that the ego has made is going to tumble. It is tumbling. It is breaking down. Why? Because everything that was deceptive, devious, is showing itself so that you can say, huh, there's a deception I don't want to play in anymore. But you have to decide to accept that God authored you. God created you whole, powerful, complete, magnificent, and you have to accept your inheritance. But you can't, you can deny it, but you can't alter. It is there waiting for you to get over yourself. All right, get over your ego self. Love you all. See you all next week. Thanks so much. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others. And again, if you're new to my YouTube channel, please subscribe. Thanks a bunch. Bye bye.